Bon après-midi à tous et bienvenue à cette rencontre du comité de délégation pour la Ville d'Ottawa. Welcome everyone to this public hearing for the Committee of Adjustment for the City of Ottawa. We are a quasi-judicial tribunal that holds public hearings to consider Planning Act applications, including minor variants and consents to several land. Those are the most common. Our hearings are back to being in person. However, the committee can enable remote participation by video conferencing when requested by registered speakers. We are being live streamed on YouTube. Both the video and the agenda can be retrieved, if you'd like, in the future from the committee's website. My name is Anne Tremblay, and with me today are my fellow panel members. Starting on my right, Member Blatherwick, Member Lecueilly, and Member Keklikan. In terms of the procedures, you saw an agenda at the beginning. It was on the screen. We tend to vary that up a little bit depending on whether the application is relatively straightforward or whether or not there's a lot of discussion that we're anticipating. So, and we will be sort of changing that up a little bit today. Just note, the panel members may seem like they're making decisions relatively quickly, but I can assure you the committee has had a chance to look at all the material that's submitted on file prior to getting into this room. And we also have a pre-meet to ensure that we're up to date on the latest information. What we really want to achieve here today is any new information that's relevant and pertinent to the committee to hear on an application. So that's the oral submission part. So we do have a portion where we get clarification to ensure that we do in fact understand the application the way it's intended. And then we get on to the public portion, which is that oral. And anyone can participate in that as long as you've got an interest. You can speak for or against, and you can be in person or online. So there's a lot of options there. As part of the statutory public notification requirements, each applicant is required to post a sign on a property and then provide us with either a hard copy statutory declaration, or then we do an affirmation or an oath. We have them all in today, so that's good news. Nobody's application needs to be held up. So in terms of procedure, we'll call each either landowner, agent, applicant down, and then we we either ask for a presentation or we may go straight to questions. In all cases, if you want to do a presentation, that's completely your prerogative. All you need to do is let me know. In some cases where applications are relatively straightforward, we don't ask for a presentation, but it doesn't mean that we won't accept a presentation, obviously. So after we've gotten any questions or clarification or had the presentation by the applicant, at that point, that's when we open it up to the public. And I have a speakers list, and I have nobody on my speakers list today other than the agents, applicants, people involved in the file itself. But if you would like to speak to the committee about an application, all you need to do is raise your hand. We'll call you down if you're in the audience, or you can also signal to our coordinators online, and they will bring you into the meeting. So I would ask that when you are speaking before this committee, please address all your comments to the chair, and be sure to only speak if you've been given sort of that go ahead. We had a situation last week where lost complete thread of one conversation because we had somebody who piped in, and it's distracting because at that point everybody kind of loses their focus at that point. So just a reminder, raise your hand if you'd like to speak, and I will for sure acknowledge you and bring you in at the appropriate time. Okay, so once we've gotten through all of the public portion, then the committee can make a decision, and we can make an oral decision right after or right, on the floor about that application. We can deny in the same way, or we can also reserve. When we reserve an application, it's because we'd like to consider other things. And so we will reconvene right after the hearing, have that added deliberation, and then make a decision. In all cases, the decision is provided to anyone who has an interest or has signaled that they would like a copy of the decision within 10 days of the hearing. And that decision outlines the reasons for our decision, essentially. So if you'd like a copy of the decision, you just need to let committee staff know that. So turning to some business matters before we get underway, declarations of conflict of interest. Anyone on the panel have any declarations of conflict for either this agenda or the agendas of either panels 2 or 3? Yes, Member Keklikan, go ahead, please.
Madam Chair, I need to recuse myself from item 2. That's Osgoode Street. The property is in my neighborhood, and so I want to avoid any perceived conflict.
All right, thank you, Member Keklikan. Anyone else? All right, so with that, we do have confirmation of 2 sets of minutes. We're going to start with May 7th. Any concerns, or are those confirmed? All right, not seeing anything, so the minutes of May 7th for the record are confirmed. May 21st, same question. Any issues? Are we confirming? Okay, so for the record, the minutes of May 21st are also confirmed. That takes us to the first item of hearing business, which is the adjournments. We do have a request for an adjournment on item number 2. Member Keklikan, I don't know whether you want to recuse yourself for the discussion on the adjournment. We can do that. So I'd like to ask Mr. Luttage to come down and speak to the committee. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You're aware of the reasons for the adjournment request by city planning staff?
Yes, I am.
You're in agreement?
Yes.
So the intent is to adjourn sine die. You understand that?
I'm not sure. I agree with the adjournment. I believe that the issues on the table can be resolved fairly easily. Whether it's an adjournment or adjournment sine die,
So it's a recirculation. My understanding.
I realize it will be. No, I realize that, yeah.
We typically sine die. That
Okay,
way
that's
we
fine.
just reset the
That's fine.
clock. Okay.
Sure.
All right. Just as long as you're aware of that. Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions from either panel member to my right on this adjournment request, sine die? All right. I'm not seeing. Is there anyone in the audience or online who would like to speak to the adjournment of this application, sine die? All right. I'm not seeing anybody come forward. So with that, members of the panel, are you ready to vote? Any last words from you, Mr. Luttage, before we vote to adjourn?
Loot good. No, I'm fine.
Luttage, sorry.
It's okay.
So all right, so all those in favor of the adjournment, sine die? All right, for the record, the adjournment is granted unanimously. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Good luck then.
Thank you.
All right, so the next application, and I'm just going to ask staff to maybe turn that mic off for me. The next application that I'd like to call down, because I think there may be, thank you very much. There may be an issue with this application is number 4 for 531 Gilmour, and I think I'm looking for Agent Simpson. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair and panel members.
All right, can you just introduce who's with you today, please?
Yes, so I'm Jillian Simpson, and I'm here with Brian Casagrande, both FOTEN Planning and Design.
All right, thank you very much. So the reason we've called you down is it's come to our attention that there is either 2 things that need to happen. Either we need another minor variance to deal with some of the deficiencies, the non-compliance issues with respect to the landscaping and the front yard. And the second element, I understand, is also an encroachment issue. So either we move forward with minor variance to resolve one and deal with the city to resolve the other, or we will need from you revised plans to show compliance.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. I think it would be the latter of the 2 options. From our perspective, we don't think, based on intended renovations to the landscaping that the client intends to do, that we won't need any variances. And we've identified a plan and sent a plan into the city planning staff and the committee showing what we think that will look like. The city encroachment is a different matter that we intend to work with the city on, and if it has to be modified, it'll also be modified.
Yeah, that's fine. So that means that we're looking for revised, we still need to adjourn then for at least 3 weeks at this point. I think we're going to the July 9th meeting so that we can see those revised plans and get comments from our planning staff.
Sorry, Madam Chair, just to be clear, so why would we need to adjourn if we're not seeking variances for anything than what was submitted?
Because we still need to see a revised plan and have comments from planning staff that they've seen that revised plan that shows compliance with the zoning bylaw and no requirement for a minor variance.
I understand, and we have provided that plan rather last minute, I'll acknowledge. But if at the end of the day, the intention of my client is to make sure that they need no variances under any circumstance. In other words, if planning staff says, move this box or move this walkway, they're going to do it, then why again would we need to adjourn?
Because the committee hasn't had a chance to see that plan and hasn't had a chance to get comments from planning staff saying that they no longer, because our report right now says that they have concerns and that there's no indication that there is a revised site plan that's been submitted. So we would need to see both those things, right? So that's why the 2-week adjournment.
And just to ask, if planning staff were in a position to say they don't have concerns, would you still need to adjourn?
Yes, we would still like to see that revised plan. You're asking us to make a decision where we have, we've seen nonconformity. We have the planning report that says that. We now would like to see a plan that complies before we make a decision.
Okay, so we did provide the plan. I guess you just haven't had enough time to see it. Is that the issue?
That would be it, Mr. Cassidy.
Okay, understood. I just need to understand, Madam Chair. So 2 weeks would be great for us because we're not planning to change anything from what we've submitted.
So as I mentioned, because of Canada Day, we're going to July 9th. So it's
I see.
actually 3 weeks at this
Gotcha.
point.
Okay, yeah, that's fine, understandable.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that. Members of the panel, any comments, questions about that adjournment request to July 9th? Not seeing any. Is there anyone in the audience or either here or online who would like to speak to the adjournment request to July 9th? All right, I'm not seeing anything. Any last words from either you, Mr. Casagrande, or Ms. Simpson?
No, Madam Chair, thank you.
All right, I think we're ready to make a decision. All those in favor of the adjournment to July 9th? All right, for the record, the decision is unanimous, so we look forward to seeing your revised plan and some comments from planning in our planning report, and we'll see you then.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, that brings us then to our unopposed applications, which are, we only have one in this case, looking for application number 629. Well, actually, I don't need to have the agent come down. So for the committee, we do know we have this unopposed. We don't have any, any comments against this project in any way, so that's against it. So all we need to do at this point is make a call out. Is there anyone in the audience, either here or online, who would like to speak to the committee about 29 Acacia Avenue? If not, I think we'll go to a vote. All those in favor? All right, so the application for 29 Acacia Avenue is granted. Okay, that then takes us back to sort of our regular scheduled lineup. So we're going to start with number 1, which is for 505 Dawson Avenue. I'm looking for Agent Segreto.
Madam Chair, committees of the member.
Good afternoon, Mr. Segreto. So the committee has had a chance to look at your application. We don't need a presentation unless you want to give one. We can go straight to questions.
Questions is good.
All right, so let's do that then. I'm going to open it up to the other panel members first. Any questions? All right, so the only thing, let's see. There's some question about tree number 1, Mr. Segreto. Can you please just catch us up on where we're at with regards to retaining tree number 1?
My understanding that tree number 1 Is that the existing tree or is that the proposed? We have 5 trees that are being proposed, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. As if it's the one on the corner, would that be the one?
Now you got me there. I don't know. All I know is I'm reading from the staff report that talks about determining whether tree number 1 is still retainable and to provide protection and mitigation recommendations to adjust the tree planting.
My understanding is that it's going to be a new tree.
All right, can we get to Ms. Young? Ms. Young, can you just provide us with a little bit insight on that tree?
Yes, thank you for the question. So tree number 1 is an existing tree. It was originally proposed for removal in the TIR, but it was retained through construction. And so the request through this was just to revise the TIR to show it for retention and make sure that it includes detail about how it's going to be retained and protected, given that there's a driveway proposed very close to it. So I have been working with staff from Mr. Segretto's business, and they're working on the revised report. So I feel like it will be fine based on that.
All right, thank you, Ms. Young. But while you're here, I do have another question for you on, I think it's condition number 12, which in my report reads 11, but I think it's 12, where you require the provision and implementation, provide and implement a tree planting plan. Now, I'm trying to figure out how you operationalize for clearing condition purposes the implement part of that condition. What's the expectation from forestry's standpoint?
Well, this is imposed usually when sites are under construction, as this one is. So the idea is that the site would be completed and the tree could be planted prior to clearance. But we do provide other options for clearance. I think it's in the, I thought it was in the condition, but we do allow for people to provide either paid planting contracts to prove that they have purchased and will be working with a consultant to plant the trees as shown in the plan, or they could enter into an LOU with the city, which is kind of the same effect.
All right, perfect. Just needed to understand the mechanics behind that. So thank you for that explanation. Okay, other questions then from panel members? All right, I'm not seeing other questions on this. In that case, I think we can go to the public portion on this night. Like I said, I don't believe there's anybody on my speakers lists for even this. So, okay, so is there anyone in the audience in person or online who would like to speak to this application? All right, I'm not seeing anybody come forward. 2 other matters then, Mr. Segretto, before we turn it over to you for a recap. My understanding is there's 2 conditions that you would like to have deleted. The first one is number 4 with regards to the noise control study, if I understand things correctly. The second one has to do with number 7 for a resurfacing agreement. Would you like to give us just a few words about those?
With respect to the condition number 4, the noise control study, this is something that we've dealt with staff, and it was understood that they would waive this condition. This is why I'm in front of the committee here today for my severance, because at the time I originally made a minor variance application in order to avoid this controlled noise study, which was suggested by planning. And then with respect to condition number 7, my understanding for condition number 7, it would be basically, I just need to know approximately what is the amount of land that might be conveyed at a later date if they were to expropriate some land from my client in the rear yard to make Kirkwood wider. That would be the question of that one there. Would it be a meter, meter and a half, 2 meters, or would it be in line with all the other properties that butt onto Kirkwood? Would that be all the same? Would they all be expropriating that same amount due to the fact that the rear yard is approximately 6 meters or 20 feet?
All right, thank you, Mr. Segreto. You know, it's funny because with the renumbering, number 7 wound up being the resurfacing agreement, but you're looking at the number 7. So you're actually speaking to the unencumbered road widening.
That's correct.
Okay, all right. In that case, I'm just going to turn it over to our planning staff to answer that question. Warren, is it Ms. Warren?
Thank you, Madame Tremblay. So essentially, it would need to be confirmed by a survey. Looking at the plan, it looks to be about, or looking at the Geo Ottawa, it looks to be about 2 meters, I believe, that would be required to get to the 12 meters from the center line. This is standard when we're dealing with consents and represents the new transportation master plan, which actually reduces the right-of-way width for Kirkwood from 26 meters to 24 meters.
All right.
I'm I'm fine with that. If it's the standard, if it's 2 meters, then we're fine with that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Segreto. But looking to my panel members now, is everybody in agreement that we can delete number 4? Panel members. Panel members, deletion of number 4. Are we okay with that one? All right, okay. And looking to Ms. Horn, we're
Yes, that's correct.
all right, so we're deleting number 4, Mr. Segreto.
Thank you.
All right, any last words for you before we make a decision?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
All right, then we're ready to make a decision. So panel members, all those in favor? For the record, your application is unanimously granted. Thank you so much, Mr. Segreto. Have a great afternoon.
You too. Thank you so much. Bye.
All right, bye now. Okay, we're gonna go to number, where are we next? 3, I believe. So this is for 110 Argyle, 455 Metcalfe, looking for agent Wesley. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. I'm here with Scott Allen from Photon Planning and Design, and we are representing the owner of the property.
All right, so thank you. We don't believe that we need a presentation from you on this unless you'd like to give one. We could go straight to questions. Your preference?
I think we're happy to deal with questions. We might refer to our presentation for clarity, but otherwise, I know you've reviewed it in detail already, so thank you.
All right, thanks so much then. I'm going to open it up to questions right now then for our committee members. Anyone have any questions about this? All right, I just have one. There was a concern by someone, and just to confirm this for the record, about a ramp that was, I guess, used to be and connect somehow the 2 properties. Can you tell me how that's being dealt with?
Certainly, Madam Chair. So we had submitted, and I'm sure it was circulated and reviewed, a response from the owner, which is Colonnade Bridgeport in this case. So a little bit of background about how the property exists is there's 3 properties, and maybe actually if the coordinator, if I could get you to put up the presentation just for reference, just while I explain this, but basically there's construction taking place on 100 Argyle for a approved, completed, and maybe if you just go next slide, please. Yeah, sure, that one's fine. So you'll see the odd shape here where these 2 buildings, of course, owned by Colonnade Bridgeport, merged on title because that is how things proceed when 2 abutting properties are owned. It was by error, and we're basically trying to rectify that these properties can once again be independently owned and operated. That being said, because those 2 properties, and in fact, the adjacent one to the east, are owned by the same owner, for the construction plan for 100 Argyle, basically access was provided through 455 Metcalfe, and that is because, as we're all aware, Argyle is a very busy street with the police station and the highway off-ramp. So basically, to make a long story short, the ramp was approved through the construction master plan to allow access to vehicles through the site construction vehicles. The intent is to reinstate the fence that divides these properties so they're functionally separate. There's no need for access besides in a construction scenario between the properties. So that's how that came about. And that's addressed in further detail in the letter that we submitted.
All right, thank you for that response. Any other questions from panel members on this? Okay, I understand, before we get too far, there is like a condition that you would prefer that we eliminate, if I understand it. It's, let me get to that page.
Yeah, no problem.
Number 2, regarding a grading and drainage plan. Did you want to address that?
Sure, that's right, Madam Chair. We had submitted some text to it to the coordinator, but just to summarize for the record, basically, we're dealing with 2 properties that are existing and established and have independent grading as is. We're not proposing any site works. So basically, what would occur if that condition is imposed is they would have to do brand new grading plans for existing structures that have demonstrated in the past separate drainage. And basically, it would be additional work and resources and time for something that has been demonstrated to operate and is only before the committee because of this property management error.
All right, thank you. The committee did have a chance to chat about this. I think we're in agreement that we could delete number 2 with regards to the grading and drainage plans. Anybody want to pipe in from the panel on that right now? No? Okay, so we will, if it's approved, then we'll, subject to the amendment to the condition. All right, with that, then again, no one on my list. So I'm going to put a call out there. Anyone in the audience, either here or online, like to speak to the committee about this application? Now's your chance. All right, not seeing anybody come forward. Before we make a decision, any last words from either speaker?
Maybe just one thing just to put on the record, just with respect to the letter. We're in a changing world, and things like generative AI are becoming more commonplace. The letter was prepared with the support of ChatGPT. I just something for the committee to consider on future applications is whether there's a need for a policy on that. Our role in responding to the public interest is responding to the local knowledge and needs of the community. And we prefer to deal with, people who bring forward their own experience rather than the use of these technologies. Again, just something to consider for the committee. It doesn't bear on this application itself. So thanks for giving me the time to say that, and I'll pass back to you.
So that's a very good point. So it's something that we need to understand better. Can I impose on you to call the committee and have a discussion with maybe one of the deputy secretary treasurers or with the secretary treasurer themselves? This is something that the committee should probably have on its radar for professional development purposes. So yeah, if I could impose on you to do that, then we'll make sure that it gets some airtime with the committee.
Thanks. We'll go through the proper channels. I appreciate your attention to the issue. And we say that out of fairness. We have a policy at our company not to use it because, again, it doesn't reflect a professional opinion. And I think on the flip side, it doesn't respect the local knowledge that we hope to hear from when we hear from community members. So that's all. Thanks for your attention to that.
All right. Thank you. And so we haven't made a decision yet. All those in favor? All right. So with the record, the application is granted. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Have a good afternoon.
Likewise. Okay, so that takes us, I think, to our final application at this point, which is number 5, and I'm looking for Agent Hume and Agent Clark.
Good afternoon, Chair.
So, Ms. Clark, we're going to be requesting a presentation from you. So whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Perfect. If the coordinator can just put up the presentation that was sent in, that would be great. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Allison Clark, and I'm speaking on behalf of the owner of 655 Donat Street. The property owner is proposing to build a low-rise rental apartment building with 10 units. And to proceed with the development as proposed, a minor variance is required to amend the maximum number of units from 8 to 10. The subject property is located within the inner urban transact and is identified as neighborhood on Schedule B2 of the official plan. Further, it is zoned R4UA in the City of Ottawa zoning bylaw. So the first slide before you here today shows the proposed site plan. It also illustrates that the building as proposed complies with all zoning provisions of the R4 UA zoning, except for the variance requested, of course, which is that we need to amend the maximum number of units from 8 to 10. This is a bit of a larger lot than what may typically be found in this ward, and as such, the developer has proposed 10 units within a building footprint that is zoning compliant. Next slide, please. So this slide looks at how the proposed development aligns with the new zoning bylaw coming into effect in early 2026. Of course, we're only in the second draft right now, but it does strive to implement the new official plan approved in 2022. So in that new zoning bylaw, this subject property is proposed to be zoned N3B. And the maximum number of dwelling units in the N3B zone is proposed to be 2.2 per 100 square meters of lot area to a maximum of 10 per building. So for the lot at 655 Donut, which we're speaking about, with an area of 580 square meters, applying that N3B criteria would yield a density of 12.75 units, reaching that 10 unit cap. So therefore, the intent of the official plan, as represented by the new zoning bylaw, is to allow for 10 units. Next slide, please. This presentation was obviously sent in Friday before additional written comments were received. So there is more than 3, as you're probably aware, but just wanted to touch on kind of some of the common themes that were coming through in those comments. So there was a chatter for sure about density being wrong for this neighborhood and that it should remain as single family homes. As the committee is probably aware, the current zoning bylaw allows 8 units as of right on this property, and only a building permit would be required for us to do that. The new official plan through the new zoning bylaw, the second draft again, will allow 10 units as of right. Implementation is slated early 2026. There was also quite a bit of chatter, about parking and transportation issues. So again, as the committee is probably aware, parking is not required for the first 12 units of any development in the Vanier area. So both 8 and 10 unit proposals are zoning compliant with respect to parking. That said, the owner has provided 2 parking spaces under this proposed development. Next slide, please. And here we are looking at the 4 tests. So number 1 being that the variance is minor. The requested variance is minor in nature and does not increase the building footprint. It does not have any additional impact on adjacent properties over what is permitted as of right, an 8-unit building. The variance is desirable for the appropriate development or use of the property. The requested variance is appropriate so that sensitive infill development can be constructed, meeting the City of Ottawa's housing goals and contributing to a density that supports that 15-minute neighborhood. The intent of the zoning bylaw is to allow for low-rise buildings of a certain scale, and the performance standards are designed as such. The proposed building adheres to the zoning requirements of an 8-unit building, and the addition of 2 units is within that 8-unit footprint. And finally, the general intent of the purpose of the official plan is maintained. So the site is designated neighborhood, and as such, the construction of housing in a low-rise form is consistent with the strategic direction of the OP. The new zoning bylaw, which is the implementation of the OP, will allow 10 units on this site, therefore being compliant with the general intent and purpose of the OP. And that's it for me. Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Clark. So the one issue I did want to raise with you, as you know, there is no new zoning bylaw. The committee is bound to considering the existing policy context. You know, the option for applicants always is if the new zoning, the draft is in, works in your favor, you can always wait, right, for that to be in place. So I want to make that quick point, because I wouldn't want anybody to think that our decision wasn't in keeping with the draft bylaw, because the reality is it doesn't need to be in keeping with. Okay, so with that then, can you tell me a little bit about the public consultation that you undertook, though? You addressed the concerns, but tell me what you did to actually socialize that project with the neighborhood.
Perhaps unfortunately not a whole lot beyond typical city notification and the sign at the front of the property, which is of course how these residents became aware. I guess, again, our thought, which was incorrect based on the comments that came in, just that we are building a zoning compliant footprint, but oftentimes residents are not aware of what may be permitted today as of right within their neighborhood. So our error there that perhaps additional consultation should have taken place.
All right, thank you, Ms. Clark. Any questions from the panel at this point? So I think the only other, oh, yes, Member Blatherwick, go ahead, please.
Ms. Clark, you're aware of the zoning bylaw, section 56, regarding adequate urban, suburban, and rural services?
Yes.
Okay. Have you had confirmation that the additional number of units that you're proposing on this street is not going to have a negative impact on water supply and the wastewater removal system in this area?
Yes, correct. We have. That is something that has been undertook by the owner as part of their due diligence.
And that's been confirmed by the city
Yes,
in writing?
I believe so. Yeah. And will be
believe so,
further
but you
analyzed
believe
through a building
so.
permit.
You believe so, but you don't know so.
I feel strongly that the owner would not have proceeded with the purchase of this property without that information in writing.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Clark. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, so Ms. Clark, the only other final point that I'm still grappling with is that in your planning evidence, I don't think I've heard, well, I guess I'm looking, if you could just maybe elaborate why the increase beyond the 8 units, which is as of right in the zoning bylaw, why going to 10? Can you give me some planning rationale for that, please?
Yeah. So again, we are within the 8-unit footprint. We are meeting all the zoning provisions as outlined in the R4 UA zone. This is a larger lot than perhaps typically found. That said, the units that are proposed within the building are still of generous size. We're talking 600 to 1,100 square feet. The units are not being, unit sizes are not suffering, I should say, because of the additional 2 units that is being sought beyond what the zoning allows. So it almost feels like additional space could be best utilized by providing additional units that are badly needed in this area. And that's what the owner has sought to do.
And just to remind me quickly, I think it's in your report and we found it, but what's the mix of units that's going in?
1 and 2 beds.
Can you tell me how many, like what's your number count?
Sorry, 5 of each. 5 of each. 5 1 beds, 5 2 beds.
All right, thank you for that information. Any other questions by the panel at this point? No? Okay, so I don't have anyone registered again to speak, but I'm going to make a call out. Anyone interested in the application, come on down. So we do have somebody from the audience here.
Madam Chair, we also have a speaker online, Adam Williams.
Thank you very much, Adam Williams. So I'll get that too. Good afternoon.
Sorry, a little nervous.
We are looking forward to hearing from you, so don't be nervous. Just need your name and your municipal address, and we'll give you the floor.
Tara Perkins, 413 Regis Avenue.
Go ahead, Ms. Perkins, whenever you're ready.
So I live directly, like I live on the corner. So I live in the corner of Regis and Donat. And just a little backstory, last July, the house directly beside 655, so 659 Donat was torn down and an 8-plex was built with virtually no parking. So our beautiful street it's going to be lined with cars, and then another 10-plex is wanting to be there, but it's going to be lined with cars. No, there's no parking for anybody. Like, it's very upsetting because my daughter bought a house on that street. My son tried to buy 659 Donat. He didn't have the money to buy it. We love the street, and I hate to see it turned into this, you know?
So so again, please don't worry. We need to hear this from people. We need to understand the context of the street. So happy that you're here today. The one point that was made by the agent, though, in the presentation, which is Unfortunately, the way it is there are many zones now that allow 8 units as of right with no parking. That's so we don't,
But
so.
why is that even a thing? I just don't understand why you're allowed to build something with 0 parking. Like, people don't take the bus. Am I gonna have to call 311 every time that somebody's over 3 hours parking on the street? Or are you just gonna give people parking passes? Because right now it's a 3-hour parking ban. You know, like, what are they gonna do?
Those are good questions, and the management of that is well, not this committee's jurisdiction, unfortunately, but it is something that's going to have to be addressed. And you know, when we've got a lot of studio apartments proposed, that typically, you know, most buildings today, nobody gets a parking space. But when you have 1 and 2 bedrooms, and obviously the probability of requirement for a car goes up. We know that.
Well,
So
699 has 2 and 3 bedrooms, 8 2 and 3 bedrooms in that one. So imagine that's gonna be families. So they obviously have parking, and then 1 and 2, I mean, 10, people have cars. You know, be realistic. Not everybody's gonna take the bus. You know?
we hear you. And like I said, unfortunately, it's not before this committee to make that decision, but I will tell you, you know, you heard reference, I saw you were in the audience when we were talking with just the previous applicant about the, well, actually, I think it was Ms. Clark who was raising it about the new zoning bylaw, which is not a new zoning bylaw, it's actually a draft zoning bylaw. But the good news there is that there's still consultation, public consultation going on about that zoning bylaw. You know, we saw there were a number of people in that neighborhood who are opposed. Now is the time to get involved because it's during the zoning bylaw review and your comments about the level of density that's being introduced and the concern about parking and just traffic issues, that now's the time to raise it with a counselor or to get involved with.
I've already tried, and basically they've just said, that's the new zoning bylaws. We don't have to provide parking for the first 12 units of any building. When my daughter bought her house in 2000 it's been 9 years, that Donut Street, we actually considered asking for that street to be closed so that it's just the homeowners that would drive on the street, because Regis, so it goes from Morgan to Regis to Ducharme, which goes to Montreal Road. So that is the throughway, whereas Donut is a very quiet street where only the people that live there drive on it. You know?
So that is a discussion. That is a discussion with the counselor, and I would say, regardless, get involved in the zoning bylaw review and have those discussions with, I think there's open houses that may, don't quote me, but, have a look online. That project is well profiled and probably has all kinds of information about how to get involved. For the committee here, the real question, the only question before us really is, do we permit the 10 units rather than the as of right 8 units? So we're what we needed was, and this is why I was asking Agent Clark to give me that planning evidence to say why the extra 2 units. That's really what's before this committee.
So if the rule is 8, why would you give them 10? If the rule is 8?
So that's what the committee has to consider based on the evidence that's before us. So not to put words in your mouth, but I think what you're saying is then stick with the 8. That would be your preference.
If I don't have a choice with 8, why increase it? If the rule is 8, it should be 8. I don't even think it should be 8, but 18 years I've lived there, and all these houses, it's a 50s style neighborhood, and people are buying them and they're renovating them and they're making them into bigger houses, and because the properties are big, they like it. It's a beautiful street.
All right. Well, thank you. Yes, Member Blatherwick may have a question for you.
Just some advice. I would go onto the city website and look up guest permit parking. These kinds of situations have existed in this city for a long time. My street, for example, no parking, guest permit parking only, took care of a huge problem we had. But that's up to you guys as property owners on the street.
I work at the Pearly Health, and in the streets around them, there is no parking signs all around so that people who go to visit can't park on the street. You have to go in. And I wondered, how can I do that? Also, how can I get curbs put into my neighborhood? Because everybody drives on my grass. All these guys who are building these buildings across the street have no consideration and are driving all up my grass.
That's a call into the city. Do put in a call about that and
After my
they'll
walk.
have some.
I can't even have my mailman come into my walkway.
So do get in contact with the city about some of those issues then, and the 311 is the first place to start, and barring that, then I hate to put this on committee staff, but maybe if committee staff could just provide some links or numbers or whatever Ms. Perkins may need, but I do understand that it's a big change in some neighborhoods, and it's not easy. So I'm going to wish you luck with whatever you can, maybe following up on Member Blatherwick's suggestion, maybe something like that might work.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much for your time today. Okay, our next speaker is Mr. Williams. Go ahead, Mr. Williams.
Hi, yeah, thank you for the time to speak. So I live just down the street. I'm at 635 Donat. I'm 31 years old, and I bought here with my wife about 5 years ago or so. And I'm very pro densification for this neighborhood. I'm very sympathetic to building additional units in it and all of that. But I do have a couple of issues with this particular application. The first, which I think is probably a minor one, is just the public consultation that went into it beforehand. I know that there is a sign up out front. There's been a car parked in front of it all week long. It's probably because of the construction that's happening next door, but it just does mean that, for a lot of people in the neighborhood who might be interested in what's going on there, that they could very well have missed this meeting as a result. I barely noticed it myself, but I'm glad I showed up. So that's the first thing, and that might be neither here nor there, but that's just sort of the general sense that I got from that. The other aspect, which I think is of a bigger concern for me, is just that this street especially, but also in the neighborhood, but particularly this street, has a ton of young families on it. And, as I understand it, the spirit of these new zoning regulations is to increase housing availability so that more young working families can afford to live in neighborhoods like ours. And certainly that's what I want to see. My intention is to continue to grow and have a family on this street. And I think that the variance that is being requested here, and especially we're talking 600 square foot units, no family is moving into that. And it doesn't seem to me like that's in keeping with the spirit of those zoning regulations and increasing the availability of housing stock that's available for working families. Really, we're talking about units that probably would fit much better in a place like downtown, where very young working professionals want to live in a very small unit that's very close to their work. That's what it seems to me like a 600 square foot unit is probably meant for. And if the application were to come back and they said, we've got all 2 and 3 bedroom units, which are great for young families, to be honest with you, I'd be all for it. Even though I know it's not super in keeping with the single family homes that are on the street. I do want to see that densification, but I want to see densification that is meant for families and not those tiny units that really would be better served for downtown, especially. And I know there's the parking rules are that, we don't have to have any parking with those units, but the reality is that there is very poor transit options in our neighborhood. So people are going to have to drive. Just for many, many reasons, I don't think it is the right thing for this street or for this neighborhood. And I'd much rather see something like what is going up next to it, which is an 8-unit complex that seems like it's much better served for families and bringing families into the neighborhood.
All right, thank you, Mr. Williams. Any questions for Mr. Williams from the panel? Just want to make just one clarification. So the zoning bylaw says 8 units. It doesn't say what kind of units, right? So if we've heard from the agent that they're looking at 5 1-bedroom, 5 2-bedroom. If they went to 8, if they were capped at 8 units, they could do all 1 bedrooms if they wanted to. And there's, that's not something this committee can address. It's really just the number of units, but your point is really well taken. So I really do appreciate that though. Okay, any other questions from anybody for either one of our speakers? No? Okay, I'm going to do a general call out now. Is there anyone else either online or I think not too many people left in the room here, but if there's anybody else online? Nope. All right. Okay. So I think we're going to go back to you then, Ms. Clark, for a recap.
Sure. Oh, okay. I was just going to say the planner file, I think, had his hand up, but I think he's gone, put his hand down now.
All right. Sorry, Mr. Gale, do you want to speak?
Yeah, I'd just like to add that planning staff agrees with the rationale that was provided by Ms. Clark, with the exception of the new zoning bylaw coming into effect. But I would like to bring it to the committee's attention that a major guiding principle of the official plan, as it's read today, is that infill development within these areas should be based on the built form and building envelope, not so much the unit count. And this is expressed, yes, in the big moves through the intensification, as well as the urban design criteria, but more specifically, I want to bring section 5.2.4 of the official plan to the committee's attention, that specifies and expressly acknowledges that unit count shouldn't be so much of a concern if we're following the built form guidelines that are proposed by the zoning bylaw.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Geldart, for that. We do appreciate your opinion. Okay, so back to you then, Ms. Clark, for a recap.
So thank you to the community for coming out to speak and for your points. It's certainly well taken. I think even as illustrated with these 2 speakers that we've just had, you can see the difficult situation that we're in. The first speaker was speaking about the fact that the larger units that the second speaker desires actually brings more cars. And the second speaker was desiring those larger units because it brings family. We constantly are in this push and pull or catch-22, whatever you want to refer to it as, to try to strike the right balance of units that attract families with those 2 bedrooms, but also smaller units that may not, push cars onto the streets. We're trying to, and at the same time, I should mention that the OP does have a large emphasis on family size units, on not just providing studio units that, yes, maybe don't bring a car, but the OP really would like to see those larger family style units. So even just like I said, in these 2 speakers that we've had, you can see that they're actually asking for, or comments actually kind of pull to different things. So we are doing everything that we can to try to hit as many of these marks as we can by providing 5 1-bedrooms, 5 2-bedrooms, 2 parking spaces, which, as you all know, is beyond what is required. And albeit that I agree with the first speaker that, we are unfortunately not in a position where people just don't have cars anymore. We're not there yet. And I get that that's tricky. So we are trying to acknowledge that by having 2 spaces that we are not required to have. And as the planner has just pointed out, and I'll bring it back to just the fact that we are a zoning compliant building, even with the 10 units, and our building envelope is the exact same as what is permitted as of right today, regardless of what's going on inside of those 4 walls.
All right, thank you, Ms. Clark. I'm going to guess that we're going to reserve on this application. You might have guessed it right there.
I did.
Okay, so with that, then I think that's, you'll get our decision, as you know, within the 10 days with the rationale. And thank you for your time today. And thank you to our speakers for coming in and to addressing the committee. This is the oral portion. That's the part that, that really helps us put things into context. So, okay, with that then, I think that's the end of our agenda. So we're going to adjourn at this point if there's no other business. I don't think so. I think we're good. All right. Thank you, everyone.